see you. And last but not least, we will finish this day with a talk about no more coding APIs by Prerna Sood, co-founder of Syncloop. So Prina, we're really glad to have you. We're just like 5, 6 minutes late, but you will have your full 25 minutes. Don't rush, please. Yes, and let's go for no more coding APIs.
Thanks, Mehdi. Thanks for the introduction, and I'm glad to be here. Thanks everyone for joining and participating in this session today. Today I'll be covering a very important emerging topic in the API market, which is known as no more coding APIs. So let me start with thinking about what exactly we are doing now. Do we keep doing building the APIs the same way we have been doing till now, or do we lean towards no more coding APIs? I thought it's a great idea to talk about and connect, and that's why I'm here to talk about it. My name is Prerna Sood, and I'm co-founder at Syncloop. So let me just start with giving you an overview of what has happened in the last decade or so in the API market. Let me start by telling you a little bit about the API market growth. Um, in the last decade or so, I've seen API market growth around with a CAGR growth of 25%, almost 25%, which is an enormous growth. So how did this growth happen in the last decade or so? Let's see. Let's look at this trajectory that I'm presenting before you. So first of all, APIs started coming up with some kind of standardization or specifications in the with the coming of REST APIs, SOAP, and JSON, to name a few. Then after it matured a little, there came platforms or tools for managing these APIs. Because of such enormous growth going on with the specifications for APIs, there was a missing link of managing APIs. So a lot of API gateways and portals came into the limelight. When I talk about API management tools, some of the big names over there would be Apigee, Azure, AWS, to name a few. With that said, cloud came into picture. Cloud was in full boom, and there was a lot of focus on cloud during this decade, followed by integrations. We see a lot of API integration platforms that are coming in the picture these days. Some of them, to name a few, are Boomi, Web Methods, MuleSoft. So till now, in the last decade or so, we have only been focused more on creating standardization for the APIs, looking at how to manage the APIs, putting them into cloud, or integrating the APIs with the third parties. So with all this development happening, what is missing here is we are adding a lot of development complexity in the overall ecosystem. What does that mean? What does complexity mean over here? Complexity means complexity in terms of stability and resiliency. So with the cost rising and a lot of learning curve uh, in the development space, there is a lot of friction in the developer experience, and time to market is a very important factor when it comes to achieving business objectives. Not only that, with the current growth rate, I believe um, in the API ecosystem there will be a lot of LLM integrations like Bard, ChatGPT, and a lot of governance tools that will come in the coming future. So the primary focus of the API landscape from here on, after integrations, is becoming or coming up with more API first development platforms wherein you can build your own APIs and deploy them and give more power to the developer, as developers are the primary users of APIs. So let me shift my focus on how to deal with this development complexity that is coming up. So complexity, when I talk about complexity, it means complexity in terms of speed and scalability. So I'm addressing, if I think of an enterprise, what are the concerns an enterprise has in terms of um, four different pillars that I have divided them into. Businesses everywhere are trying to take their products into the market faster. They want everything to be built on API so that they have more flexibility to connect it to the other or third party integrations and make things faster. Not only that, they want something reusable components so that they can actually connect their inbuilt resources with the third party integrations. Architecture, when you talk about architecture, they're helping in reducing the developer complexity because they want to go towards maturing the API models, wherein they want more flexibility in making it cloud agnostic, creating some kind of standardizations as well. When it comes to data, the third pillar that we considered, that these are the concerns that businesses face while they are dealing with data, is they want to have more control over the data they are managing, and apart from that, they want to have a flexible way of managing data on making it more cloud agnostic. Not only that, developer experience is a very important part when it comes to reducing the development complexity. So developer needs to be given the necessary tools to make sure that they increase their productivity, reduce the number of hours they put in to build any kind of code without losing their freedom of code, and giving them more ease of use, stability, and more access to components they can plug and play. So, moving on from here, I believe that the next thing that I want to explain in terms of complexity is some of the particular platforms or popular patterns that are available or emerging in the API world. Like I just mentioned in my previous slide, there are a lot of focus for businesses towards the API for creating API first enterprises. Not only that, they want more control and stability for whatever system they build, and they want to make the system robust so that they can scale it at any point without being stuck in silo development or something. So from the developer point viewpoint, you have to they want to have a visual overview of what kind of APIs they are building and how they manage from there. Other pattern, there are hundreds and thousands of plugins available today in the API world, which everyone is using for integrations purpose, but I don't see a lot of uh, people actually making these plugins or developing these plugins using API tools. Moving on to the next part, so what kind of APIs we actually think will be a lot more useful for the businesses when we talk about creating API first platform or creating an API first organization. So there are when it comes to API development, there are three different type of APIs. The first one is experience APIs. Second is the business capability APIs, as you can see on my screen. The third one is the platform APIs. So let me start by explaining you what exactly the platform APIs are. Platform APIs are the APIs which help you integrate with multiple ecosystem and have access to the third party platforms. Experience APIs, when I talk about that, you must have heard about GraphQL, which is a very popular name these days. It helps you create a lean structure over the network. And with the business capability APIs, businesses are building their business logic or writing their logic just to make or automate their business workflows. So with explaining all three different types of APIs, there is a need for a next generation API development platform which actually helps in dealing with or in tackling all these three different kind of APIs, keeping in mind the standardizations as well as the security and the resiliency. So the ultimate purpose here, from after the integrations and the cloud that have happened in the last decade or so, the focus here would be to come up with a platform which can sit between the API gateway and the database, reducing the work or the effort that is being taken to build any kind of APIs, managing them, deploying them, automating the workflows as well, for not leaving the integrations from there on. Moving on, what will be the certain features that I've noticed some of the new platforms are coming up in the API field, which provide a lot of features. You might have heard about low code or no code API platforms. The problem with these low code API platforms or low code or no code API platforms, what comes from a developer's perspective is everyone thinks that if we use the low code development platforms, um, it takes the freedom to code. They don't have that much freedom to play around with all the components or mix and match the components they want to use for development, which they have while using the traditional methods or the native methods of coding, such as Java, Python, to name a few. But we are looking for a next generation platform over here, which I believe is almost in the verge of coming in the next decade or so, because it will be a necessity for the developers, because coding single APIs is a very redundant task. Not only redundancy is a problem, the problem is they cannot, the debugging is another issue they have to fix. So for debugging and for speeding up the time to market, developers need to be given right tools. For the right tools, I believe that visualizing APIs, coming up with low code, no code APIs, which help them in creating custom workflows, giving them more power to code without taking away their freedom to code. Not only that, some of the platforms that are coming up in the market, in the API market, they have, some of them already have these mapper features wherein they can map the input and output fields, and then write the business logic so that everything is automated from day one itself. uh, Going along to moving on to scheduling or taking your services what you have created to a different level for deployment. Developers want more control over scheduling what service they want to schedule and what part of a service they want to promote to a different environment, whether it's a production environment or any other cloud environment. So the need for any additional CI/CD model has to be reduced, because when, from a developer standpoint, if you feel that you are coding something, then you need to engage into a different CI/CD model to actually implement what you have created. It creates a lot of pressure on the developer because he has to juggle around with different vendors or different programs to make that happen, and there is no consolidated view when they can look at the analytics or the monitoring for managing whatever APIs they have worked on, any kind of debugging they want to do, any kind of rework they have to do. So there has to be a platform which comes up. And with that said, I strongly believe that a need for API development platforms which provide a lot of visual interface, as well as more power to the developer to code and the freedom to code, with a lot of standardized models and a lot of security in place, is the future for API development from here on. So with that said, what will this API platform achieve for any developer or for any organization? I would like to point out here that with having such kind of platforms, I see a lot of upcoming platforms in this space, both in the open source as well as non-open source. I still believe that time to market for any business is going to increase by 65% with automated standardization processes, leading to less number of manual errors and giving more power to the developers. And not only that, with the built CI/CD models, 95% or 90% is going to be the saving in time as well as effort by the developer to build anything. So having a API first approach development platform is the necessity from here on. And I believe we are looking into a future wherein developers will not only be writing code using these visual interfaces and including some of the AI features as well, AI platforms as well, but also it's a revolution that is coming up, and it's for the next decade or so. And whatever developers we see, I believe that it's a chance for you to come on, hop on the revolution and move from here on. Let's join the revolution. Thank you. Any question and answers? I'm open, Mehdi.
Yeah, one quick question. We've put more and more things on the developer shoulders in the API space, DevOps, DevSecOps, and so many others. Do you see in the, let's say, API lifecycle and the API tooling, do you see also more tasks or more skills that are required by developers now?
Yeah. uh, Skills, I think it's always better to keep updating yourself or keep upscaling yourself as a developer, because a lot of new key tools keep coming every now and then. Whenever there is a new product or new technology comes up, the developers have to upgrade themselves in terms of the skill upgradation. uh, I feel that when you say that we need to, there is always a lot of I'll say friction from developer side whenever something comes. Not only from developer, it's a human nature that everyone goes against something new. It takes time for the change to settle down, and for people to develop to address it or accept the change. So like you asked, the question is the same thing. If something has to change, then resilience or upscaling is definitely required from developer side. I know you said that developers have to deal with a lot of things, but what I am saying here is, with API development platforms coming off, API first focused development platforms, the work for the developers would be reduced a lot, because coding would not be some similar to what they have been doing using the native coding languages like Python or Java. They will have a visual interface and AI in place within these platforms, and they can just code using those, using simple English. And then their main focus would be on debugging, which is the more important function for from a developer perspective to deliver any kind of product to the market.
So instead of copy and paste from Stack Overflow, we will ask a GitHub Copilot or a ChatGPT to generate some code and debug, right?
Yep. Not debugging. I'll say developers' focus would be mostly on getting the code or asking questions from ChatGPT. I've seen a lot of developers using ChatGPT and Bard, for that matter, to generate a lot of code, instead of asking from Stack Overflow and waiting for some human people to write the code and help them out. They're using AI. The developers are getting smarter day by day. They're using AI for generating the code, and when it comes to deployment or any kind of debugging, that's where their focus will move on. Testing, debugging, and deployment. These will be the three areas they will be more focused on, rather than just writing the code and rewriting it again and again. There will be a lot of reusable components within these API first development platforms that they can make once and they can reuse a number of times, reducing their effort and manual work.
But a lot of things are shifting left. There is infrastructure as code, policy as code, authentication and authorization as code with uh, OPA, Open Policy Agent, for example. There is a API gateway as code. I've seen also like a shifting left. So really, everybody tried to put everything as code. So the developers is really the center of every step of the value chain of the, let's say, the API deployment.
Yeah. So
Yeah. Thank you, Prerna. Thank you very much for being there and
yeah.
sharing that with us. Again, we can follow you on Twitter, LinkedIn, or go or see what you do with Syncloop. Yeah, we're really glad to have you, and yeah, I will wrap up the conference. See you at next API Days conference, Prerna.
Thanks for the opportunity to speak at the conference, and looking forward to many more in person. Thank you.
Yeah.